You're tuned to Afrikaap, the Cape Town sound.
Here I am, strolling down Atlantic Avenue with the sunlight in my eyes. Here I am, and there's nothing I would rather do when I want some peace of mind. I leave the smoke of Rio behind. This evening starts to fly. I want to be with the ocean breeze when the mountains kiss the sky. So come on, down Atlantic Avenue. Let the summer take a hold of you. Cause I know there is no place like the avenue when the music gets a hold of you. Oh, I don't know to be funny, but there's always time to spare. For all the troubles of the world when the man can match the bear. Oh, oh, oh. Please come on down Atlantic Avenue. La 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 la. Here I am, strolling down Atlantic Avenue, with the sunlight in my eyes. Here I am, and there's nothing I would rather do than I want some peace of mind. So come on down Atlantic Avenue, let the sun take your form. 'Cause I know there's no place like the avenue when the music gets up on. Here I am, strolling down Atlantic Avenue with the sunlight in my eyes. Here I am, and there's nothing I would rather do than I want some peace of mind.
You're tuning to Afrikaap, the Cape Town sound.
Welcome to Afrikaap Radio Online.
24/7.
A wise man once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." This is Walk to Wellness with Alton David, right here on Afrikaap Radio.
All right, good afternoon, good evening, welcome. It's been a minute since I've been in the Afrikaap Studios. My name is Alton. I'm the host of a show called Walk to Wellness, where we have conversations about topical issues relating to our wellness. And wellness is not just about our physical being, it's about our mental state, it's about our social being, and we generally have a conversation. So you're welcome to jump onto our WhatsApp line on +27069 2459543. We started the show with Randy Crawford's Street Life and Atlantic Avenue by the Average White Band. And those of you who are over 45, 50 will know those songs, because those are the songs we used to play in the Galaxy and West End and all of those places. I've got some good old classics lined up that some of you will know, but the conversation this evening is going to be hot, because the conversation this evening is around gender-based violence. And I had, as some of you know who tune into the show, that I often choose topics based on what's happening, A, either in the world, or B, what I've been exposed to and conversation I've had with many different people in the preceding weeks. So this last week, I was privileged to go to the Artscape to watch a GBV production by a group of youngsters out in Hanover Park. And the production was shy of 2 hours, hosted by a church, and we'll unpack it in a bit. But what was interesting for me is that the auditorium on both shows was sold out. There was a capacity crowd in the Artscape at 150 Rand a ticket, which I thought was absolutely reasonable. But sitting there watching it, what was interesting for me was all the people that were there, were either commenting positive or negative to the scenes that were happening. And we'll kind of unpack the play because that leads into the conversation. But what was interesting was that my perspective is that the people who were there didn't take home the message. They took home the performance of the people that came to watch. So if Cecilia was a dancer, the people were there to watch Cecilia as opposed to engage in the content. Because everybody you spoke to or engaged with, or you were listening as you were exiting the theater, was around. Did you see how Cecilia did this? Did you see how Alton did that? It was quiet. That was awesome. No one spoke about the storyline. And for me, that was a shocking revelation, that as much as people engage and empathize and sympathize with the concept of gender-based violence, it has no resonance. It has no resting place, because it's there. It's someone else's problem. It's someone else's issue. What also highlighted for me this week was 3 days ago. I think it was Monday or Tuesday, the news broke, maybe even yesterday, that a 16-year-old girl at Lotus River High in Cape Town, South Africa, was pushed against a vibrecrete wall, and both males and females in her class or in a school, I don't know the exact details, were hitting her and beating her and kicking her. And for me, that was quite interesting. Interesting in the sense that nothing has been done. Well, the school is now calling for a disciplinary action against those pupils, number one. Number two, they are also engaging with the school on how to deal with those kinds of things. And thirdly, how do we open that conversation in those communities? And part of my challenge around it is, again, people don't engage in that space, because all people want to do is have the conversation around who are you, why are life treating you, what are you doing, what's going on in your world, and how do we then turn it into something different where people can actually engage in the conversation, where people can engage on how life is. So you're welcome to jump on the WhatsApp line +27069 245 9543, or on my Facebook or my YouTube, and join the conversation. I said to someone earlier today, I do not have first-hand experience in a massive space of gender-based violence. So I'm relying on you to join the conversation, and let's have the talk. For me, it's about sharing the almost theoretical knowledge, and I'm blessed to be able to say that, as opposed to the personal experiences. Cecilia says on the WhatsApp line that the storyline is important. They came to the show and tell what is happening in the community. Yeah, Cecilia, and I'm going to use the story to unpack some of the content of what I prepared. But before we get there, let me read a speech, and I'm going to read it verbatim from the Premier of the Northern Cape, Ms. Hazel Jenkins, on the launch of the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children on 25 November 2010. And it reads as follows. The campaign on 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children is a very important period on our events calendar, and proves that we are united with the rest of the world in combating the scourge. The campaign is aimed to unite communities and families to ensure that men stop abusing women, respect women and children, ensure tough action against perpetrators, empower young women and children, ensure a better life for people, to create a violence-free society, recruit men and boys as active members of the campaign. So let's talk there for a second. This learned premier presupposes that it's only women that get abused. Let me ask that thing. Let me stop and pause there for 1 second. Is it only women that get abused? I'm going to come back and we're going to unpack some of the principles and some of the concepts around gender-based violence. It goes on to say that violence against women and children must come to an end. Together, we can and must do more to prevent violence against women, provide services to survivors, and ensure that perpetrators are punished. Let me park there and ask, are the stats correct? I will come back to that. Gender-based violence reflects inequalities and iniquities between men and women and compromises the health, dignity, integrity, security, and autonomy of its victims. It encompasses a wide range of human rights violations, including sexual abuse of children, rape, domestic violence, sexual assault and harassment, trafficking of women and girls, and several harmful traditional practices. Again, is it only women that get raped? Is my question. Any of these abuses can leave deep psychological scars, damage the health of women and girls, particularly their reproductive and sexual health, and in most cases result in death. There have been cases recorded of women who have been sexually abused, raped, and can't deal mentally and emotionally with the scars and eventually take their own lives. We'll park that there. Other widespread forms of violence in some African countries include systematic rape, where women are used as a weapon of war, leaving millions of women and adolescent girls traumatized, forcibly impregnated, or infected with HIV and AIDS. In the DRC, 5 years ago, there were 10 South African soldiers who proudly announced, and I'll have to look for it, it's just come to me now, proudly announced that they went around having sex with the locals while waiting because they had nothing better to do, was the comment. So she goes on to say, program director, we marked the 16 days of activism campaign, not only to raise awareness about the negative impact violence has on women and children, but most importantly, to take a decisive stance against the abuse of women and children. Let us say no to violence against women and children. Let us say no to rape. Let us say no to human trafficking. Let us ensure these perpetrators of these crimes are pushed by our courts. We believe that through the collective efforts of government, civil society, organizations, and the business sector working together, we can broaden the impact of this campaign. By supporting this campaign, thousands of South Africans have also helped to increase awareness of abuse and build support for victims and survivors of abuse. As the provincial government, we are firmly committed to lead this campaign and to ensure that it succeeds in its endeavors to contribute to creating an environment where women and children are free, safe, and protected. We have set ourselves the task of improving the position of women, giving them more self-confidence, and making sure that they assume their rightful place in society and in the public sphere. We have, through various empowerment campaigns and programs, ensured that women enjoy their human rights and be treated with dignity and respect. We dedicate this important occasion on the calendar of our country to the complete elimination of violence and abuse against women and children. It is a time to encourage our people to engage in practical programs and take active steps to fight the scourge. Program director, we have been reeling from the news of some of the most brutal and horrific acts of violence and rape that were recently committed by some of the perpetrators of this heinous crime against women and children, as reported on television, newspapers, and radios. She goes on to list a few. We know those are old cases. I'm not going to repeat those. I am citing these incidents to you to demonstrate that the severity of these acts of violence against women and children and the devastating impact it has on victims and families. It also shows how endemic to South African schools gender-based violence has become. Ladies and gentlemen, since 1994, government has developed legislation to redress the wrongs affecting women and children. 1. Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act of 2000 was passed to ensure that everyone enjoyed the constitutional rights. This act ensures that women have equal enjoyment of rights, freedoms in addressing the wrongs of the past. The Employment Equity Act of 1998 ensures that the discrimination in the employment, occupation, and income within the labor market that resulted from apartheid laws are curtailed. It ensures equitable representation of women and other historically disadvantaged persons at all levels of public and private entities. The Maintenance Act of 1998 guarantees the rights of a child to a living standard which is adequate for physical, mental, spiritual, and social development. The Act ensures that maintenance for the child is recovered from the parents or other persons financially responsible for the child. We'll unpack some of these. The Domestic Violence Act of 1998, clearly 1998 was a historic year in this space, was enacted to afford survivors of violence maximum protection from this domestic abuse. Women who are at the receiving end of domestic violence now have a legal recourse that will ensure their protection. The Children's Act of 2005 and the Children's Amendment Act of 2007 was enacted to, amongst others, protect a child from maltreatment, neglect, abuse, and degradation. We therefore call on you to join government, civil society, organizations, and the business sector if we want to win the war against perpetrators of these heinous crimes. Program Director, we must ensure that these laws and acts find practical expression in our daily lives and society at large. Our campaign is emphasizing the obligation of all that has had to report cases of abuse to assist the police and social workers in the investigation and to be able and available to act as witnesses in court to increase probability of a conviction. Every woman and girl should live in a home where she is free from the threat of violence. Every girl should be able to attend school without the risk of abuse. Every woman and girl should be free from gender-based violence. Every woman and girl should walk the streets of our towns and townships without any fear of harassment. Let us continue to support our law enforcement officers to carry out their duties to their full potential. Let us point out the perpetrators who hide amongst us. Wow. Wow. That was the speech of the then Premier of the Northern Cape, Ms. Hazel Jenkins, 25 November 2010. Let me get to some of the comments. So Jules says on Facebook, I wanted to make that comment now too. My daughter is in GBV space and she's trying to make it known that men are also victims of abuse. She's doing a master's. She has done a master's based on this. Thanks, Jules. Comments on the WhatsApp line on +27 069245 9543. Jump in, drop your comments. Jackie says, thank you for the important topic. It's a taboo topic subject in some households and schools. 100% Jackie. Amanda says, good evening, Alton listeners. They need to report the entire picture. our men are also abused by women, 100%. Men that are raped and don't report, as our police have no tact in dealing with such cases, 100%. I heard that to Amanda, that someone once said that he went to go report that he was raped by his partner. And the police laughed at him and they chased him out and said, go be a man. Say yes. And I was dumbstruck. Because again, the misinformation and the fact that it's only women that experience abuse, and we'll get to all the different forms of abuse, but that it's not a topic for conversation. Amanda goes on to say, I personally know a man close to me who was physically abused by his wife. Yes, women and girl children are abused, however, so are men and boys. 100% Amanda. Ladovinia says, good evening. She's tuned in, an interesting topic. Yes, it is an interesting topic. Jackie says, men in many cultural settings and are expected to accept the phenomenon of gender-based violence against them with calm, particularly in public, due to their masculinity. The reality of violent acts against them is deepening, and it may affect their mental health and distorting their roles in the family settings and society. Sure. So if you think about it, in many cases, men are just as abused as women. However, no one speaks about it. No one mentions the fact that men are also abused. Why is that? Because it's a taboo topic for men, and men feel like they lose their masculinity. They feel like they don't belong. They feel like, I don't know, they're not worth anything. So let's take a short break while I let that simmer in. I'm going to play the song.
I used to think that love was just a fairy tale, until that first hello, until that first smile. But if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause this love is everlasting. Suddenly, life has new meaning to me. There's beauty up above, and things we never take notice of. Wake up and suddenly you're in love. Ooh, yeah. Girl, you're everything a man could want and more. 10,000 words are not enough to say what I feel inside. Holding hands as we walk along the shore. Never felt like this before. Now you're all I'm living for. Suddenly, life has new meaning to me. There's beauty up above, and things we never take notice of. Wake up and suddenly you're in love. Each day I pray this love affair you has forever. Suddenly, life has new meaning to me. There's beauty up above, and things we never take notice.
Suddenly, you're in love. There's beauty up above, things we never take notice of. You wake up and suddenly you're in love.
It's a love thing.
It's a love thing. It's a love thing. The look in your eyes is more than enough to make my heart rain. From the moment we met, that there was no doubt that my life would never be the same. Have you ever had this feeling that comes over me? When you do me, I know that's how it's supposed to be. The whole of me. It's a love thing. It's talking in my sleep about the love rain. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. Such a feeling I get when you're touch. You're like no other I felt before. It's so good when I need you so much to make you mine forevermore. She showed me what myself is love is all about. It's a love thing. I feel that pounding in my heart when you call my name. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. Every time that you're near, it becomes so clear. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. I feel the pounding in my heart when you call my name. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. Feeling that comes over me. You make me know that's how it's supposed to be. The heart is feeling. It's a love thing. Got me talking in my sleep about the good baby. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. It's a love thing. It's that. It's a love thing. 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 It's a
Welcome to Afrikaap Radio Online.
24/7.
You're tuning to Afrikaap, the Cape Town sound.
A wise man once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." This is Walk to Wellness with Alton David, right here on Afrikaap Radio.
All right, welcome back. Good evening. My name is Alton Davids. If you've just joined in, this is the show called Walk to Wellness, where we have a conversation around various topics: physical, mental, social, spiritual health, and we engage with like-minded people like yourselves, and you join the conversation on +2706924595543 or on my Instagram, on my Facebook, and on my YouTube. You're welcome to drop your comments and join the conversation. Tonight's topic is gender-based violence, and if you've just tuned in, you've missed the first part of Walk to Wellness, sponsored by All My Sports SA, where we had, I read the speech of in 2010 by the then Premier of the Northern Cape. Let me get to some of the comments before we go forward. Who was that? Someone said on the WhatsApp, Ladovinia says, the stigmatization of men reporting any form of GBV is off the charts. No wonder they stay silent. We have handled the case of a 17-year-old young boy raped by his teacher in 2009. His own father called him a moffy, in inverted commas, for wanting to report it. After many counseling sessions with him and his mother, he decided not to lay charges, switched schools, and committed suicide in 2014 because he could not get over what happened to him. He was forced to remain silent by a parent who is supposed to be his protector. And this was leaked into the family, and they started effeminating his name at get-togethers. They are responsible for creating safe spaces for men as well. Or we are responsible, sorry. Jackie's response was, here is the phrase, men and boys don't cry. It is a harmful stereotype that has a negative effect on our boys and me. It teaches them to suppress their emotions and protect their masculinity. Amanda says, we as parents need to protect and love. How could they? It breaks my heart. When your young family fails you, it is the most lonely feeling. Home is your safe base and is supposed to be, or rather is supposed to be. What has happened to our society? So the question then is, how do we change? Or let's unpack what gender-based violence is firstly. So I played two songs. Firstly, Suddenly by Billy Ocean, because suddenly things happen without you realizing it. That suddenly you get hit. Suddenly something happens. And that's what abuse is about. It's not something that you can foresee because you can't. It's something that happens almost instantaneously as a result of something that, as we call it, a trigger. So what are the things that causes that? And we'll get to that in a bit. We may do this over two parts because I see this is not going to be a one show. The other song I played was It's a Love Thing. And often people say, if you love me, you'll do this. Like this case of this little 17-year-old boy. If you love me, you won't tell. If you love your parents, you won't tell. because they love you, they're not going to do anything. So let's unpack what they say is gender-based violence. So gender-based violence is rooted in the imbalances and iniquities and inequalities between different economic groups and results in violence. Gender-based violence is disproportionately affects women and girls, but men are also victims. I got a private message from my mother who's tuned in, and my mother says, maybe if we brought back religious education into schools, things would be different. There's a thought. There's a thought. Let me not go down that path, because we can go down that same path that in 2010, when Dr. Kada Asmal removed physical education from schools, it also caused and is one of the contributing factors in my mind as to why society is the way it is. So there are different types of gender-based violence. Let's unpack them for a bit. So there's the physical abuse, beatings, assault, murder, and any form of bodily harm. So bodily harm reflects someone inflicting something on you, whether they use an object, throw you with something, hit you with something, or use their physical being, kick, trample, smack, whatever. That's an example of physical abuse. Whether it is man to woman or woman to man. Again, we are not stereotyping and stereotypically saying that it's men only. It's a combination, and we need to be open to the fact that it's both men and women. Both men and women can get abused. Both men and women can be discriminated against. Amanda says, I'm raising male children, and I make sure that they know they can cry as they feel just as we, women, feel. They were and are taught to protect their female counterparts. However, do not allow yourself to be abused in any way. Wise words, Amanda. Lavinia says, true that, Jackie. I have a 20-year-old son now. He was raised to be emotionally aware and vulnerable. He doesn't have any qualms about crying when he feels too overwhelmed by the current situations he's faced with. This is how I know as a parent how to show up for him, my son. In that moment is to support him. Jackie also says to my mother's comment that my mother's a wise woman. Very true, Jackie. I agree with that. So let me park there. So let me take you through this play. The opening speech is this woman standing on stage, wearing black, solemn as ever, standing there giving a 4-minute soliloquy of her life. That physical abuse has ruined her. Physical abuse has destroyed her. She can't leave because she's got nowhere to go. She can't do anything because she has no support. She is caught in the trap of being able to do nothing and accept the consequences of her actions. That's the opening scene. And everybody is dead silent. We then have a scene where a father and his son are sitting, and the father then is so caught up in everything and angry because his wife has not brought his breakfast. Note the words I'm using. Has not brought his breakfast. When she eventually does, he realizes and tastes it and says this is rubbish and throws it to the floor and pushes her. They go to school. The son goes off to school and he comes home with his football coach, and his football coach says, let's stop at my house. And the football coach gives his wife a warm embrace. His son comes running, and his son gives him a hug and says, hello, Daddy, can we play now? And he says, no, not now, my son. I'm busy now, but later you and I are going to have quality time. The wife comes out, and the wife says, What would you like for supper, my dear? And the coach says, no, don't worry, it's my turn. I will treat you. And this boy looks at the coach and he says, Coach, there's something wrong with this picture. In my house, none of this happens. My mother must cook, she must clean, she must make everything. And my father will tell her what to do. And the coach says, no, my friend, that's not how everybody lives. Is that, which of those two scenarios do you find yourself in? A, B, do you find most prevalent in your community? Because just there and then is two different scenarios in the same neighborhood. Which one fits the description? Which one rings true for you, or parts of it? Or is it a combination of, he can beat me, but he also shows me love? A Jekyll and Hyde kind of scenario. It goes on, and the guy brings his girlfriend home, and he sits on the couch, and the mother and the daughter comes home, and the son comes home, and they see the father with his girlfriend, and the daughter approaches the father, and the father smacks the daughter, and the mother comes and he smacks the mother, and he says to the son, my boy, this is how you treat women. They need to listen to me as the head of the home. I make the rules. I make the decisions. This is how men treat women. And in the back of my mind, I'm sitting in dumbstruck. But it's the reality of what happens. And this is based on a real family experience in Hanover Park. And you can hear this Hanover Park aunties screaming and shouting at this father for hitting this woman. I will not use the words that some of them used. And then it goes on, and this guy walks away with his girlfriend, and the woman then breaks down in tears, the mother, and she phones her mother and she says, Mommy, I need your help. And the mother says, what's wrong, my dear? Through the sobs, she says, my husband is beating me. My husband's beating the children. He's got a girlfriend. He brought the girlfriend into the home. Can I come stay with you a few days just to find myself? The mother turns around and says, my dear, you're not coming to me. This is normal. This is what your father, this is what your grandfather did. This is what your father did. This is what your father-in-law does. This is how women are treated. This is what I've been through. This is what it is. Make peace with it and deal with it. Shut up and do what a woman is meant to do. Accept what the man tells you and how the man treats you. Because you don't work. He's a hard-working man. He goes to work. He fends for you. He brings food home. He gives you the money. He puts the children to school. Why are you complaining? Just because he gives you a slap so now and again? Do you have a roof over your head? Yes, mommy. Do you have food to eat? Yes, mommy. So why are you complaining? And the audience is dumbstruck. On the one end, utter silence. On the other end, once it's now, the pennies drop, other women are screaming, leave him, leave your mother. Go find help, go find help. And there's an engagement in the audience, and you're sitting there thinking, are you understanding the magnitude of what has just happened? It goes on, and the woman leaves, and the son then, and the father, and the coach then goes into this man box, as they called it. And the father's soliloquy is, as a male, we've been stripped of everything over time. We've been chucked in a cage where we've become our own worst enemies. We've been pushed away from society. When we came as slaves to South Africa, we lost our identity. We lost our dignity. We lost who we were. And the women forced us to go out and work. The women forced us to go fend for ourselves. So it's by our right that we control them. It's our destiny. It is our opportunity. It is what we do. Because they need to appreciate us. They need to accept that we are the head of the home. They need to know who's boss. The coach then stands and the coach says, that's one reality. My reality is that I come from a loving home. I have loving parents. I have food on my table. My mother and father don't always agree. My mother and father don't always do things together. But there's no violence. There's no disrespect. There's no antagonism. And this boy turns around and he says, that's the reality I want. That's the reality that I want. The cycle stops with me. And then the mother comes out and she says, the cycle stops with me. Because I am not going to allow my husband or my daughter to have a man like that. And my son will not be like his father. And everybody's clapping and cheering because now this production is done. Because it's an amazing production. And like I said in my intro, the message was lost. Because in between there are people dancing and everybody's cheering for Samantha, for Peter. They're shouting and getting excited because this person is now dancing on the Artscape stage. And that entire message fell on deaf ears for some people. And even though they experienced in the third person the physical abuse that people go through, it counted for absolutely nothing, purely because they weren't part of it. They didn't see it. For them, it was somebody else going through it. And until it happens to them, it is no reality. It does not affect them in any way. I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to play a Michael Frank song just to give you a chance to let that message assimilate, and then we'll come back. Before we get there, let me just get to the messages on the WhatsApp line on +270 692 245 9543, the Afrikaap WhatsApp line. Jackie says, Alton, this is a reality. As an educator, I have to listen to these kinds of stories every single day, and I'm helpless as I can only listen and hug these little souls. Jackie, the reality is we have, I was going to say a fully functional support system, but I'll be lying. We have a support system which isn't fully functional. We have a social worker network, we have a educational psychologist, and we have NGOs like Sezonke, GBV Society, and a host of others that we can call upon, but we'll park that. Ladovinia says that's lived reality on almost all the Cape Flats community households. The children are exposed to that way of life. 100%. We're going to play Michael Franks, When the Cookie Jar is Empty, and then we'll be back.
When the cookie jar is empty, baby gets so low. When the cookie jar is empty, baby sucks her thumb. Baby breaks her dishes. She won't eat her peas. Baby never misses, but she throws her spoon at me. Leo is high as I am leaving. Love is the well that she is living. When the cookie jar is empty, baby thought that right. When the cookie jar is empty, baby signs of me. Baby gets so sassy. How can I explain? Baby moves her chassis like a locomotive train. Virgo is high as I am turning. Love is a candle, she is burning. When the cookie jar is empty, baby it gets so cold. When the cookie jar is empty, baby sucks her thumb. Baby breaks her dishes. She won't eat her peas. Baby never misses. She throws her spoon at me. Virgo is high as I am turning. Love is a candle, she is burning.
Welcome to Afrikaap Radio Online.
24/7.
You're tuning to Africa, the Cape Town sound.
A wise man once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." This is Walk to Wellness with Alton David, right here on Afrikaap Radio.
Welcome back. This is Walk to Wellness with Elton Davids, brought to you by All My Sports SA. Yes, that was Michael Franks. And some of you may or may not know that song. Because, remember I said earlier, there are triggers that get people going. So, a simple example. If I like biscuits and I like sweets, and I come home and there's nothing in that cookie jar, that's going to trigger me in an anger fit of rage to do something. And it's literally that simple, that something as minuscule as that can trigger someone to be destructive. It's literally something as minuscule as that that could trigger abuse of some sort. Amanda on the WhatsApp line on +2706924595543 on the WhatsApp line of Afrikaap says, how can you profess to love your partner, yet in the same breath you beat them? Love, don't harm. Love or loving is supposed to be nurturing and safe, and your safe space from this world. I'm not naive, please don't get me wrong, but where have we as humans lost the plot? It makes my stomach turn. Sure, interesting. I don't know where we lost the plot, Amanda, but it's not something that's happened last week, last year, before 2010 when I read out the speech of the premier. It's an age-old habit and problem and vicious cycle that it has to be broken bit by bit by the victims. So the next part is something called sexual violence, which, like physical violence, many of us know. Many of us may have experienced it. Either we were raped, we were sexually assaulted, we were sexually harassed, we were forced to do sexual activities beyond our A, safe space, B, permission. And many times we focus on those two elements. Whether as a male or as a female, those are the two elements that get the most publicity. Because like I explained earlier, the Lotus River High child got physically abused by the boys. A, it could be classed as bullying. B, it could be classed as GBV. It also depends on who's asking the question and in what perspective or from what perspective they're looking at this. So we're not going to get into too much of the physical and sexual abuse because we know those things. The next one I want to focus on, and it's not a joke, but it's something that binds us and holds us back, is a thing called economic abuse. How are you thinking to yourself, what is this guy talking about? What is economic abuse? Economic abuse is, like I explained, where this woman in this musical is trapped in a circle. A, she is totally dependent on the man. And let me just be correct and say that I'm using male and female genders in a heterosexual space, but I'm not excluding those who identify differently. So, just for ease of explanation, okay? So, the male in the relationship or the female, let me make that right, male or female in the relationship withholds financial resources, prevents you and I from going to work, prevents you and I from doing things that hinder us from generating an income. So, let me use a crazy example. just trying to conceptualize it. So let's for argument's sake, say that, let me choose a name, Amanda. Amanda's quite vocal on the WhatsApp line. Amanda and I are in a relationship. Let's go atypical. Amanda is an influencer on social media. I take Amanda's phone away. So now she can't work. She can't do a job. She can't earn income. She can't be posting all the stuff that she needs to. That is economic abuse. Does it make sense to you? Does that make, in any sense to you? Or I take her keys away and I say she can't go to work. And I leave, or I throw the keys somewhere. And she's now got to go and look for the keys. And eventually when she finds it, she's late for work and gets into trouble. That, my friend, is economic abuse. That is a form of GBV. As crazy as it sounds, it's a form of GBV. Another form of GBV, which many of us also know and is very prominent, is psychological abuse, where we inflict pain using that little thing. And I use that term loosely. The little thing that has the biggest impact in our lives, our tongue. One of the smallest organs in our bodies, yet has the biggest impact outside of our bodies. It amazes me all the time. How, as someone will say, he's got or she's got no filter. There's a disconnect between what happens in the heart, the head, and the mouth, what comes out of the mouth. So how do we engage in that space? How do we change that? What are some of the causes that we can see and feel and engage in? Before I forget, there's another form of abuse. It's called, and many of you may not understand this, there's a thing called the dowry. For many of you, you would know it as lobola, where when a man wants to marry a woman, they need to go and present themselves in front of the husband or the wife's family. And you need to pay a sum of money or an equivalent of something for the possession of my wife. Listen to the words I've used. I've got to pay for the possession of my wife. And that dowry or lobola is based on a range of factors. One, is she still a virgin by the parents' definition? Does she have children? Obviously, if she's a virgin, she wouldn't have children. But if she's still a virgin, it's more money. If she's educated, you've got to pay back, in inverted commas, the cost of that education, whether it be financially or in whatever terms it is negotiated. And if you have children, your dowry or your lobola becomes less. Also, your status in the family circle determines the value of your lobola. And often, many people have to pay a dowry or lobola. And that is another form of physical, mental, emotional, and economic abuse. Because now you have to cough up 20 cows, 10,000 rand, 50,000 rand, over and above all the other expenses of wanting to get married. So it's real, people. It's real. It's conversations that get had, and it's conversations that we don't talk about. Good evening, Janine. Janine says, Tuning, what a great topic and love the awareness. Many do not know that there is more than one type of abuse classified as GBV that people need to stand up against and protect themselves. 100%, Janine. We just mentioned them now. Physical abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse. Those are the various elements. And if you break them down, there are many more. We just cross them, just for ease of explanation. So, like I said, I play the song by Michael Franks, When the Cookie Jar is Empty, because abuse happens as the result of a trigger. And Janine will tell you, Janine and I have debated on one or two occasions about triggers. And triggers are simple things that happen as a result of something that's happened in our past, that when it happens, it knocks you on your head, it knocks on your heart, it knocks on your mind, and it says, hey, remember what happened then. And you almost go into a fight or flight response to either combat that or deal with it in one way or another. So some of the causes of GBV, some would say that it's the inequality and discrimination in a given space. So from a physical perspective, a stronger male or female would exert pressure and force on the other person. Cultural and social norms determine things. So, using the example of the musical I went to go watch on Saturday, it was normal in that household and in that circle, for the man to have a girlfriend, even though he's married. B, for him to work and for her to be at home. C, for her to be subservient and do exactly as the man says. D, to accept whatever the man gives her, whether it be financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, and she needed to deal with all of those things and accept it, because in her circle, in a family, in a community, that's what's expected. That's what it is. That's how people live. Then there's the lack of social, legal enforcement. So even though we go and we report it will take 6, 9, 12 months for a detective to even come knock on your door and say, I'm here to engage with you on this sexual harassment case that you've laid, or this rape case. Previously on this Walk to Wellness, we debated with Daniel about safe homes or safe rooms at police stations. So for those of you tuned in, a safe room in a police station is a room that has a bed. It's got teddy bears. It's painted bright. It has a care package. And in this care package is soap, deodorant, sanitary towels, tampons, and a towel. In the event of a woman, a child, or male, for that matter, being abused physically, mentally, or sexually, they go into this holding room until the case is being able to be dealt with. You can report the case, then they call a social worker, and then it also you need to get to a district surgeon to validate that you've been raped. And once that happens, you now have a rape case. Then we have the economic abuse. We've spoken about it, the lack of resources, the lack of support, and then we talk about the conflict in families, in spaces where people now, because there's this inequality we spoke about earlier, people generally then end up fighting over all kinds of things. I listen to Cape Talk every day. It's my go-to radio station. Their byline many years ago was for the well-informed. So I'd like to think I'm a bit well-informed. And interestingly, Mayor Gordon Hill Lewis said, what time was that? 5:15, that there are currently 13 million unemployed people in South Africa. 13 million, of which 7.5 million reside in the Western Cape. So, just taking that stat, whether it's a census, whether it's thumbsuck the number, it's irrelevant to me. With that amount of people unemployed, my grandmother used to say the devil finds work for idle hands. How many of those people do you think are victims or perpetrators of gender-based violence? A, they got nothing better to do. B, they're frustrated because they A have no food. B, got nothing else to do. C, it's their lived experience. So right there and then, we have a significant amount of abuse that would happen across the country, only because the system has failed us and failed them, that there's not enough work for them. Sure. That's staggering. That is absolutely staggering. I'm just conceptualizing what I've actually just said. That because society has failed us, because society has turned out so many people who are frustrated, so many people who are angry in their families, in their workspace, with society, the fact that they have this sense of hopelessness, the sense of emptiness. There needs to be an outlet. There needs to be a space for them to unwind and get it all out. Hence, take a short break while I allow you to assimilate that and play a song by Ernie Smith, because many of these people, whether they like to believe it or not, are lonely.
And I can trust you that way. When I'm feeling kind of lonely, all I do, I call you. And you come and say, you'll make it okay. And I can trust you that way.
When I'm feeling kind of lonely, all I do, I call you. We'll make it okay. I can trust you. When I'm feeling kind of lonely, all I do, I call you. And you come and say, we'll make it okay. And I can trust you that way. When I'm feeling kind of lonely, all I do is call on you. And you come and say, we'll make it okay. I can trust you that way. Say when I'm feeling kind of lonely, all I do is call on you. And you come and say, we'll make it okay. I can trust you that way.
Welcome to Afrikaap Radio Online.
24/7.
You're tuning to Afrikaap, the Cape Town sound.
A wise man once said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. This is Walk to Wellness with Alton David, right here on Afrikaap Radio.
All right, welcome back. If you've just tuned in, good evening, welcome. My name is Alton. I'm the host of Walk to Wellness, brought to you by All My Sports SA, where we do wellness. We look after people. They engage with you on a mental, spiritual, and physical wellness. And we're talking a very deep topic, like we always do on Walk to Wellness. We engage in terms of life, topics around life. Tonight we're talking about gender-based violence and the concept that gender-based violence is not only something that happens to women. It happens to men. It happens to people who identify differently. There are many cases where people have been murdered and abused mentally, physically, emotionally, economically, because they've identified themselves as moving from one gender to another. So let's get to, you're welcome to drop comments on Facebook, on my YouTube, and on my Insta, and tell me what your thoughts are around this. Amanda says, where is it? Amanda says, talking about economic abuse, it reminds me of an elder man in my community who would leave to go away for weekends, lock his family in the house without food. I can't remember that anything was done to help them. It was a hush hush. That lady stayed in that marriage with the 3 kids. Ladosha says that's the way, the only way an abuser can exercise their power over their victims, unfortunately, is to lock them indoors. Amanda goes on to say, I'm talking of when I was a child, many moons ago. He was a man, old buzzard. He would go mental with an axe. Jackie says, like the men who would take their wives to a bus stop to go to work in the morning, and on a Friday they're in charge of a hard-earned money to support their toxic behaviors and habits. Sure, sure, sure. Interesting. So let me ask this question. Is it something that is spoken about? Is it something that we see? Or is it something like Amanda says, rather hush hush? Is it something that is not lived? Statistics show that every 3 hours, a woman is murdered. A woman is attacked. Yesterday morning at about 20 past 5, I told you I listened to Cape Talk and I enjoy the debates. A guy, and I'm going to use these terms loosely, called in and said that there are 483 white murders of farmers in South Africa every year. And Afrika Malane, in his quiet way, said, okay, if you think that's a lot, just hold on. And you can hear him typing on that keyboard, and he pulls up a stat and he says, in 2021, I think it was, 283 murders in Langa alone, in 1 month. So how is your 400 and odd significant? And the point I'm trying to make is that you either see it as a glass half full or a glass half empty. You either condone this type of behavior or you don't. You either do something or not. Economic impact of GBV is billions. It's billions in the sense that it affects you and me in how we live our lives, number one. The impact on the perpetrators and the victims, and more importantly, the fact that you can't go out and earn, or the fact that you're not earning influences your decision making. How common do you think this is in men? Statistics show that, again, statistics is based on reported information. Now, there are many who will tell you, and Janine, as a registered counselor, will tell you that many do not go to report for fear of reprisal, for fear of embarrassment. Because now, if I go and report it, and I still live with my husband or my partner, a police vehicle is going to come to my house. Because now they need to investigate this. So the fear and embarrassment of having to say, and then what are the neighbors going to say? There's a police car here. What's going on? And they all come stand outside and they all want to be there to see what's going on. But of those who are brave enough to report it from a male perspective, it's about 20 to 30% of the male population report some sort of abuse. 20 to 30% of the male population, of which many of those cases don't go anywhere. They go to file 13 purely because policemen don't take men seriously when they come and report abuse. Yet, when women come and report abuse, it gets more attention. Yet, I'll give you another example. In Free State on Tuesday, Some of you may know this. 3 police women brutally assaulted another woman in and outside of the police station because she came for help, and then she got turned away, and she said she will report them. Now, is that a form of abuse when the police physically hit the person, smack her, trample on over her, and kick her? Would you report that to IPID? Do you think IPID would do something of that? I don't know. You'll wait and see. The police commissioner says he's going to deal with it. We often talk about child abuse, and we say that child abuse happens because it's not something that the child can control, because it's forced. Like we said at the beginning, it's the relationship of power that forces the child to do something. It forces the child to be quiet, because if you tell, you're going to get in trouble. It's your fault. You did it. You this. You that. And it makes the child embarrassed. It makes the child ashamed. It makes the child feel as though they are not worth anything. It breaks their self-worth. It makes them distrust people. It makes them often distrust people in their own circles. It makes them distrust the fact that my family were there to support me, as Amanda said earlier, are the people who turn against me. Amanda raised an interesting thing. Let me just take a step back, because that's just triggered something in my brain. That is elder abuse that we don't talk about. We don't talk about the principle of when Granny comes to live with you and you tell Granny, no, there's no food now, Granny, you must wait. And you end up giving everybody everything else without giving Granny, because it's Granny must just wait. We don't talk about these things, but these things are real. These things happen along life's journeys that we don't see, that we don't feel, until the day happens to you. Until the day that it's you that A, either get abused, or B, it's you that makes it. Janine says, so true. Fear plays a huge role. At the same time, the focus is the perpetrator and not the victim. Men are being abused silently. How are males supposed to stand up for themselves when they are being belittled? Agree? And that's the thing, Janine, on the WhatsApp line. Men are being belittled when they stand up and say, I've been hit. My girlfriend, my wife is not giving me money, or she's taking my phone away. I can't go to work. I can't do anything. That's an economical abuse. Wayne from New Zealand says, good evening, everybody. Popping in. Wayne, does the same thing happen in New Zealand? Many people will laugh, but it's true. It happens. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not a Cape Flats thing. It's a Cape Flats thing in South Africa, in Cape Town, because it's our lived reality. But I can tell you, it's not a Cape Town, it's not a Cape Flats thing, people. It's not an economic thing. Get that out of your heads. It's not based on economy. It happens to the people who live and earn millions. It happens to the unemployed. It happens in Cape Town. It happens in the Cape Flats. It happens in Constantia. It happens in Llandudno. If you're in Cape Town, if you understand Cape Town, it happens every single way. Don't get caught in that stereotypical behavior that it only happens to poor people. My friend, you're going to be sorely missed. as the Afrikaans terminology, Afrikaans idiom says, sy sit die pot mis. Want wragtig waar, dit is nie net vir die arme mense wat dit gebeur het. It happens across the board. Many of us experience it because we engage with people on those levels. It's either someone you work with, and you think it's a factory worker problem. It's not. It's definitely not a factory worker problem, exclusive factory worker problem. It's a people problem. It's a people problem that we need to engage. We need to unpack it in many different ways. And some of the ways we can unpack it is by understanding what are some of the signs we can see. Sebastian Wayne says, men are silent and accept what comes their way. True Wayne. Because, to Jackie's point earlier, men don't cry. We are taught that. We are taught that men don't cry. Men don't complain. Men are the providers. Again, to last year's show, October I think it was, we spoke about the stereotypical behavior of human beings. That we are judged and determined based on what society says, based on a range of different factors. One of it is religion. Religion says that the man is the head of the home. Is that still true? Is it a figurative statement? Is it a literal statement? Is it something that is in practice? And those are the things we need to be debating. Those are the things that need to be engaged in your spaces. How are we having these kinds of conversations, people? So I'm going to play Judith Sapuma, because sometimes you smile, sometimes you cry, and sometimes you dance, and then we're going to unpack some of the signs and telltale signs that lead us to believe that abuse is taking place. Don't go anywhere. This is Afrikaap Radio, Walk to Wellness, sponsored by All My Sports. See you now.
Celebrating life is sweet.
You're tuning to Afrikaap, the Cape Town sound.
Welcome to Afrikaap Radio Online.
24/7.
A wise man once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." This is Walk to Wellness with Alton David, right here on Afrikaap Radio.
Welcome to Afrikaap Radio Online.
24/7.
All right, welcome back. If you've just tuned in to Walk to Wellness, sponsored by All My Sports SA, we are in the final stretch of the night show. With permission of our station manager, we'll go over a few minutes. And with your permission, you'll stay with me as we kind of round up. Let's just get to some of the comments on the WhatsApp line, +27 0692459543. Zaida says, good evening, I'm tuned in on the website. We should break the stereotypical behavior of men don't cry in inverted commas. Remember, some people are raising boys. And what message are we sending out? That it's not okay to be silent on abuse, whether you are male or female. 100% Zaida. We definitely need to be breaking that silence and breaking that stereotype. Wayne says, yes, societal norms and current trends globally determine the fate of men. Jackie said in an earlier comment, let me just get there, where we, some community leaders and even church leaders are not comfortable to address this topic. They are afraid of losing their support or membership. Charity begins at home. If we reach or change one person or child or adult, then that's a start to making the world a better place. Cecilia says, through Jackie, but I'm open about my abusive marriage I was in for 15 years. In our ministry, my door is open for anyone who is in this type of situation. Thank you, Cecilia, for being vulnerable. Cecilia says, I also speak at various events to women that face abuse and need guidance. Jackie says, I was at a place of employment where the learners were so desensitized by the violence within the area and at home that they would cheer and laugh when there was a fight or someone gets hurt. Wow. I've moved schools, and as Mrs. David said earlier in a private message to Elton, bring prayer back to schools. My current school learners pray before entering the learning space, and I can assure you, since school started, we did not have a single fight. So there is merit in it, Jackie, definitely. So as we come to almost the close of tonight, let me just, as many of you know, I do what I call a helicopter summary or helicopter overview of some of the aspects. So from a physical abuse, physical science we see as a result of abuse is physical signs. Unexplained bruises, unexplained cuts. Why is someone's arm broken? Why do they need to go to the hospital so often? Why do they stay out of work? Why are they walking strangely? Why are they withdrawn? Why do they have chronic pain? Why do they withdraw from society Why do they withdraw from people? Why are they so anxious? Why are they so jittery? Jittery means if someone comes close to you and you say something, they jump. They on edge all the time. Why do they feel and are fearful all the time of everything? Why, when you raise your voice, they are startled and they back away, and some of them go into almost a fetal position as a sign of surrender? Do they have panic attacks? Do they have emotional breakdowns? Do they practice self-harm or have thoughts or comments about suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts? From a behavior perspective, yes, I know that in the black culture, and I use this term loosely, there is the culture that you do not look at someone in their eyes when you engage with them. But when people constantly do not look at you in your eyes or stand half away from you, is that something you should be concerned about? Is it something you need to be looking at to ensure that this is potentially a victim of GBV? Do they wear long sleeves all the time? Do they cover up their body? Because if they're covering up their body, potentially there are marks, there are signs. Do they have an eating or sleeping disorder of sorts? Do they engage in crazy behavior? And let me say that everybody has some tendency of crazy behavior, but we're talking about things that are desperately different to the norm. Do they hesitate to talk about their personal selves, or what's happening at home? If you ask them how they are, no, I'm good, life is good, everything's okay. Often, many people who are extrovert, in inverted commas, they are loud, they are out there, it's often a sign. I'm not saying always, often it's a way of keeping my personal life and my private life away, because I'm the life of the party, I'm the noisemaker, so you're not going to get close to me. May his soul rest in peace. A friend of mine, Mario, was like that. Mario was the guy who was the life of the party. Mario used to swear, Mario used to tell jokes, Mario used to be the barman. And 2 years ago, Mario committed suicide. In his car, put the hose pipe in the exhaust, put it through his window, had a joint, and left the car running. And he was found. Only because we didn't know what was going on with Mario. Do you think that those are telltale signs that we need to be thinking about? Financially, are people not having access to certain things? Yes, we all live on a budget. We all are constrained in one way or another, that we don't always have money for everything we need. But it doesn't mean that we are economically abused. We are forced to make decisions where we have to quit our job because our partners, A, don't like where we're at, B, don't want you to work, C, have issues with you earning more money than them. Constantly you are dependent on someone to feed you, to clothe you, to give you money for everything. They control your bank accounts, they control all your assets. That's a sign of financial abuse. Those are signs. From a sexual abuse perspective, people move away and shy away from intimacy. They don't want to be touched. They have recurring sexually transmitted infections because they either need to fill the gap and want that sensation of sex all the time, or B, they want to feel like they are being loved and wanted and appreciated. They have that sense and discomfort in having a conversation about sex. And then lastly, people are in the social space become isolated. They move away from people. They move away from things because they don't want you to get close to them. They don't want you to engage with them because They are fearful you're going to find out the truth. You're going to find out that they are victims or perpetrators of gender-based violence. Again, gender-based violence is not stereotypically man on woman. It could be woman on woman, it could be woman on man, it could be man on man. There is no gender stereotype that says only men are abusers, only women are victims. Let's get that clear. Secondly, let's get it clear in our heads that GBV is not a poor man's challenge. It's an every person challenge. It's a every person experience, potential person experience. Whether you live and earn 10 million, whether you earn 10 million Zim dollars, it's everybody's experience, or can be everybody's experience. Based on the triggers, we spoke about triggers, based on the experiences of our past, based on what we bring into the environment. So, in closing, let me say that there are many organizations to whom you can go who potentially can support you. There's Lifeline, there's Tears, there is gender-based violence organizations, NGOs, there are social workers, there are psychologists, there are counselors like Janine. There are many professionals out there who can help you. Don't be fooled that you have to walk this path alone. In closing, let me just get to some of the WhatsApp comments. Amanda says, Alton, thank you for the topic. Brent on YouTube and Rene says, lovely conversation, much needed topics. Thank you. Cecilia says, at times I still shut down when someone raised their voice at me. I'm healed. And the raised voice triggers past events that happened in my marriage. In my marriage, I was invisible, not a greet or how are you doing? Nothing. And Amanda says, that's understandable, dear. Healing takes time, and I feel you should take the time to heal as it runs deep. Be kind to yourself. Healing is not a one-day game. It's a continuous process that happens over time. It happens in the comfort of support. It happens in the comfort of people who care, who love, and who support you, and people who understand all the challenges you go through. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alton Davids. It has been an interesting conversation. I thought I'd share some of the thoughts around GBV with you. And I'd like to close by one of my favorite songs that some of you know that it is my favorite song, one of my favorite songs. It's a song by a woman called Sandy Patty. I'd like you to sit back. I'd like you to think about the conversation. I'd like you to listen to the words. It is a Christian song, but understand the lyrics, understand where it's coming from, that healing is not a one-day game. Healing is not something that happens today. It's something that takes time, it takes people, and it takes support. My name is Alton Davids. Thank you for tuning in to Walk to Wellness, brought to you by All My Sports SA. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Insta. Come visit us in Wynberg and enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a safe week. Be safe out there. Look after yourselves. Ciao for now. Listen to the words of the song.
Fervent prayer rose up to heaven. A fragile soul was losing ground, soaring through the earthly babble. Heaven heard a sigh. This was a life of no distinction, no successes, only trials, yet gazing down on this unlovely one, there was love in heaven's eyes. In heaven's eyes, there are no losers. In heaven's eyes, no hopeless cause. Only people like you, with feelings like me, amazed by the grace we can find in heaven's The orphan child, the wayward father, the homeless traveler in the rain. When life goes by and no one bothers, heaven feels the pain. Looking down, God sees each heartache, knows each sorrow, hears each cry, and looking up, we see compassion smile, a blaze in heaven's eyes. In heaven's eyes, there are no losers. In heaven's eyes, no hopeless cause. Only people like you, with feelings like me, amazed by the grace we can find. In heaven's eyes, there are no losers. In heaven's eyes, there is no hopeless cause. There's only people like you, with feelings like me, and we're amazed by the grace we can find in heaven's
A wise man once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." This is Walk to Wellness with Alton David, right here on Afrikaap Radio.
You're tuning to Afrikaap, the Cape Town sound.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. Share your comments in the chat. Have a lucky evening. Ciao.